Good morning, YouTube, BookTube. This is Johnny down on the lower level where I store our books. Yeah, it is here in Southwest Michigan. It's September the 12th, 2024. It's 7:57 in the morning. I had to get up at 5:45 this morning to get my blood drawn, which there's a lab just 5 minutes from where we live. I have my yearly physical the end of this month, and my doctor wanted blood work done, so I did that. So I got up really early, and my wife left this morning to have breakfast with a friend. So, and I decided to come down on the lower level and to do a video, even though, like I've mentioned, I have this perfectionism that when I do videos, it's not a true reflection or presentation of reality for me. I mean, it seems so unreal because because of my fallen nature, I can't be perfect. But I don't think I've done a used book haul in a while. And I still go to thrift store. Yesterday I went to thrift stores just around where we live. I went to Action House down the street. And then I went to Goodwill, and then I went to Legacy. And I still got books from Blue Stockings, $1 a bag sale a couple weeks ago. I still got some of those. And so I thought what I'd do is just on September the 12th, 2024, early in the morning, I would just show you the used books that I have found recently at thrift stores, Blue Stockings. I did get a book in the mail the other day, but I'll show that in a future video. I found this at Goodwill. It's called Institute of Chicago, The Essential Guide. The Art Institute is in Chicago, Illinois, which is about 3.5 hours from where we live. And I like art, as you all know, and it just has what is in their Art Institute. I like looking at art books. So I just got this. This kind of thing you can sit down and just look at it. There's a Hopper, very famous Hopper painting. So I got that. Now it's 8 o'clock. And then I found Dorothy Allison. She wrote a very famous book, Bastard Out of Carolina, which I have somewhere down here. This is a little memoir, 2 or 3 things I know for sure. 2 or 3 things I know for sure. So I picked this up. It's a memoir about her growing up and her life. As you all know, I like biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, letters. Then I found this novel. It takes place here in Michigan. And it was recommended by Jim Harrison, who I really respect. And I'm not sure if it's really, it says it's called Cold. It takes place in Upper Michigan. Cold by John Smolens. It looked interesting, so I picked it up. I'm always buying novels. And I found this at Goodwill, Johnson's Life of London, People Who Made the City That Made the World by Boris Johnson. As you know, he was the mayor of London. Then before that, he was a journalist. And then he, I think was prime minister. It's just on different, it's just Johnson's Life of London. And he has chapters on J.M.W. Turner, Winston Churchill, Keith Richards, just people who, men throughout history in London. This is on Abolitionism, A New Perspective by Gerald Sorin. This is on the abolitionist movement in American history, A New Perspective. This is so on abolitionism. I have a collection on slavery and Civil War, the abolitionist movement, things like that. I have biographies on abolitionists. This is another memoir, Brother to a Dragonfly by Will D. Campbell. I never heard of this book, but it was recommended by Walker Percy, who I respect, and Julius Pfeiffer, who was cartoonist for The New Yorker, and Robert P. Warren. It's an older book from what I can gather. It was first published in, it says here, Will D. Campbell, Mississippi Meridian Biography. When we were living in Jackson, Mississippi, when I was in seminary at Reformed Theological Seminary, Marin was just not that far from where we lived there in Mississippi. It's a nice place, Marin. It's an old town. It has still plantations from the 19th century. But I picked this up. It's a biography. I found this at Gateway Rescue Mission, a penny a copy, Readings from the Catholic Worker, edited by Thomas C. Cornell and James H. Forrester. If you know the history of New York City, you'll run across the Catholic Worker, and in this is selected writings of people who wrote for the Catholic Worker, and the most famous person is Dorothy Day. She has several writings in here, so that's why I picked it up. I have biography on Dorothy Day, but it goes into my collection in New York City. And then I found at Gateway also a biography on Chester B. Himes by Lawrence P. Jackson. He was a African-American writer. He wrote, he lived from 1909 and he died in 1984. He wrote about crime novels that take place in Harlem, and he wrote other books. But I have another biography on Chester B. Himes. Himes brutally rendered racial politics in the best-selling novel If He Hollers, Let Him Go, but he became famous for his Harlem detective series, including Cotton Comes to Harlem. A serious literary tastemaker in his day, Himes had friendships, sometimes uneasy, with such luminaries as Ralph Allison, Richard Wright, Carl Van Vincent. So anyway, I got that from my biography section. And then I found this novel by Kiran, Desai, Hullabaloo and the Guava Orchard. I have this already by her in my library, Inheritance of Loss. So I found this, another novel of hers, the other day. I picked this up at Goodwill, and I read this. I went and looked at my live journal, Crooked Fingers, and search engine, and I read this in October of 2004. But I can't find my copy, so I bought another copy. It's called The Clearing, a novel by Tim Galter. I can't pronounce the name. But I read this back in 2004. In the back, it's recommended by Larry Brown, who I collect, Rick Bass, who I collect, Robert Olin Bolter, who I collect, William Gay, another famous Southern writer, Richard Rusco. And I just remember reading this and being really impressed by it. So I don't know if I still have my copy, but I just grabbed it. How to Be Both by a novel by Ali Smith. I had this already in my library, so I put the double in my car in a box to take to some thrift store or Blue Stockings for in-store credit. This is Camera, A History of Photography from, I can't pronounce it, the Daguerreotype to Digital by Todd Galston. Yeah, it cost me $1.12. Just a history of cameras. I like cameras, even though I can't afford the ones I've been. Well, if you got really a good camera that costs $2,000 or $3,000, you've got to take classes now how to use them. And so I just have a basic camera. Even I take photos of flowers and birds and of myself, and I used to take pictures of parks around here. If I went to some county park for a walk, I would take seasonal, autumn pictures, winter, spring. But it just has all these pictures of cameras throughout the history of cameras. And I like looking at things like that. It has very famous photos. I like photography. As you know, my brother is a photographer for the Washington Post. Just has all these pictures of cameras. Then I found this book a while back by Herrick J. Dolan, A Furious Sky, 500-Year History of America's Hurricanes. Now, I already had his book in my library, Leviathan, A History of Whaling in America by Eric J. Dolan. I already had this in my library. And then I had his book, Fur, Fortune, and Empire, The Epic History of the Fur Trade in America by Eric J. Dolan. So then I found his book, A Furious Sky, 500-Year History of America's Hurricanes. So now I have 3 books by him. He's written a lot of books. He's one of those writers that just makes a living writing these kinds of books. He wrote A History of America's Lighthouses, Black Flags, Blue Waters, The Epic History of America's Most Notorious Pirates, things like that. So I picked up this book. As you know, a hurricane right now is hitting the coast of Louisiana. Then I found this novel, Emmanuelle de Villepin. I never heard of her. This is translated from the French by John Dolay, The Devil's Reward. I looked at this, and it took place during the in Paris, France, and it looks over the life of this woman, starting with the First World War and through the Second World War. I found this at Legacy thrift store, Looking for a Good War, American Amnesia and the Violent Pursuit of Happiness by Elizabeth D. Samet. And Looking for the Good War, Elizabeth D. Samet examines the literature, art, and culture that emerged after World War II, bringing her expertise as professor of English at West Point to bear on the complexity of post-war period in national life. She exposes the confusion about American identity that was expressed during and immediately after the war, and the deep national I can't remember, I know what that word is. Ambivalence toward war, violence, and veterans, a history that was suppressed in subsequent decades by dangerously sentimental attitudes toward the United States' supposedly exceptional history and destiny. Anyway, it just looked interesting, nonfiction. I had this in paperback, and I found a hardback of this, Barbarian Days, A Surfing Life by William Flanagan, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. So those are the used books I found recently at thrift stores, and just a hodgepodge of stuff. Nothing really that would blow my mind. So yeah, today is a Thursday. I don't have, I got a book coming in the mail. I always got books coming in the mail. One thing, when you're always reading books, one thing I do if I find a nonfiction book, I immediately look at the bibliography or the footnotes, and I look those books up, and I always find stuff to use. I try to find it used. Sometimes I find stuff at thrift stores. But, you know, to be honest, I think I'm getting to the point where I'm kind of not that much into it anymore. I keep thinking how short my life is going to be. Like I've always say, in 28 years, if Lord willing, I live that long, I'll be 100 years old. It's 28 years. That's nothing. And so I think to myself, you know, what's really important right now in my life? And are books that important in the light of eternity? I mean, if I'm always thinking about that, I've been thinking about this verse a lot lately. It's in 2 Corinthians in the New Testament. He says, it says there in chapter 4 of 2 Corinthians, starting at verse 16, therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Then starting in chapter 5, verse 1, for we know that if our earthly house, the tent, is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed with our habitation, which is from heaven. Indeed, having been clothed, we shall not be found naked. For we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, not because we want to be unclothed, but further clothed, that mortality may be swallowed up by life. Now he who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who also has given us the Spirit a guarantee. So yeah, it's like this life is here but for a moment. And then there's the eternal weight of glory. And in this body, we groan as Christians, and we long for that habitation. As he says here, this tent is destroyed. We have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. So I keep thinking to myself, that's what's really important, is eternity, being with God and being with the saints and the elect angels, and that glory to come. This world, I'm more convinced, is just like I said, this world is fallen. It's not my home. I'm just a pilgrim, stranger in a foreign land. And so why all these books, you know? I mean, why? Maybe I should just read my Bible and pray and seek that world to come. But yeah, maybe sometimes you get into habits, and maybe, or you get into certain kind of trips, and after a while they just become not that important anymore. You change, you go to a different place. Now, I always will be a reader. I will always read books, but maybe I have enough books. Maybe I need to just focus on what I have, or just not get so into it. I still like going to bookstores and used bookstores and thrift stores, and I'm still not sure. As you know, for many years I volunteered at the local library used bookstore, the Book Nook, which is supposed to open up sometime the next couple of months. I'm not even sure if I'm going to do that anymore. Maybe I'm just kind of like changing, I suppose. Anyway, it is now 8:19 in the morning here on September the 12th, 2024. I still have been reading, besides the Bible, I still been reading, I have it right here. I've been reading, still reading. I even read it last night before I went to bed. Still reading A Glassberry Romance by John Copperpowes. I've read 933 pages, and it's 1,088 pages. Really enjoying this. I'm almost done with this. Started writing a new composition book down here. I write this at night before I go to bed, and I just started this one. I filled the other one up. I don't write every single night before I go to bed in here, but I just started doing that a couple years ago. So yeah, so I hope you're all doing well. I do thank you for the new subscribers. Do thank you for your comments. Do pray as we go into the autumn season that it'll be a good reading season. Yeah, autumn and winter are kind of like, you just want to sometimes cozy up with a book. So I'm rambling here. I don't really have anything to say. I'm doing okay. Like I said, I got blood work done this morning. Next week I see my therapist, psychologist. I haven't seen him in 6 weeks. I'm doing okay. It's like, I often think like I'm on a roller coaster, you know. I'm up and down, up and down, up and down all day long, and I just have to pray all the time for God to give me grace to persevere, to go through the day, and to look to Him for strength. Look on eternal things, and not get so upset about what's going on in American politics, what's going on in Israel and Hamas and Palestinians and Ukrainians, and the war in Sudan, and drought and hurricanes and forest fires, and just all the things around me that just, you know, you would want the world to be a place of paradise, utopia. But this world is coming to an end. One day God will come in the clouds of glory, the second coming of Christ, and He'll judge the wicked and the righteous, and He will destroy this world and bring in a new creation. And that's what's real. That's what's eternal. This world, this human history of mankind is but nothing compared to the eternity of the glory to come. So those kind of things I have to keep in my mind and try and pursue after holiness. I know it's like that verse in 2 Peter. I might be able to read this before this comes to an end. I never know when this video is how long it's going to last. But he says, therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hasting the coming the day of God, because which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to His promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. That's from 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 11 through 13. Nevertheless, we, according to His promise, look for a new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. So with that, I will close. Pray you have a good reading weekend. Thank you once again for your comments and for subscribing, and may the Lord bless. Until next time, bye.